FireBytes. Today we're going to be talking about integrating single sign-on. I'm Johan Blumhardt, sales engineer for the Northwest WatchGuard territory. So today we are following up with the session that we did last time. Again, if you haven't checked those out, I do record those and post those online. You can get to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/WatchGuardNW. View all of the exciting content that we have. I just released a new installation of Dimension Command, so if you haven't checked that out, make sure to make your way over there and watch that video. I think you'll be extremely pleased with what WatchGuard's coming out with, exciting new products and new features. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in, and just like always, we kind of have a multi-part session. We have an agenda that's going to basically talk about the background of a single sign-on, the benefits, how to identify those users. We're going to talk about some of the options for single sign-on, whether it's event log monitor, exchange monitor. You pick the best tool that fits your environment, and we'll go ahead and cover that. For the sake of time today, we're going to cover the event log monitor. We're going to talk about some of the key points, and then we're going to look at the installation configuration of that SSO agent with Exchange or with the event log monitor today, and we'll go over that in more of a hands-on style environment. So again, just the background on single sign-on. Active Directory and single sign-on complement each other. Single sign-on is the seamless identification of users as they log on to computers, and it assigns users to IP addresses for policies and reports. So as I talk about those policies, maybe it's a bank teller policy that I want to tie directly into my Active Directory user group, and Johnny belongs to bank tellers. I can create a policy based on that group that's going to automatically apply to Johnny as he logs in. Without that Active Directory integration, single sign-on is really only helpful for Dimension reports. So we'll go ahead and cover that as well. Right here we have the authentication list. We can see all of our users. So as we have the ability to integrate that single sign-on, we're going to see immediately the effects of that as we're looking at users populating in. Now again, just to recap, and again my apologies if you were here last time, and this might be a review for you, but the Active Directory integration, it does allow you to create policies based on those Active Directory users and groups. It also allows you to authenticate those users to VPN, whether it's the SSL VPN or IPsec, and then as well the authentication portal. It also allows you to have network admins or different tiered access to firewalls or Dimension with the Active Directory credentials. So it's more of that single sign-on. So rather than having to remember 20 different passwords, they can simply tie directly into their Active Directory password and have that one password for multiple services. So just like we have here, this was before, and again, rather than the olden days of making a policy for ASA or a PIX, we're now going to be able to make policies based on Active Directory users or LDAP users, but for the sake of today, we're just going to talk about integrating with Active Directory on there. So again, old style policy of making any trusted. Here we're just blanketing anyone that's going to HTTP. We're applying this policy on there, and now we're switching it more to a tiered level of access. Now, some of the ways that you can actually use this in the field would be, for instance, if marketing wanted to be able to get to LinkedIn or Facebook, but obviously you don't want to give Facebook access to everyone in your organization. So this allows you to have that tiered access tied directly into application control. So again, rather than just allowing or denying streaming media in your network, you can say, you know what, let's go ahead and limit it to 10% of my total bandwidth. We recognize that YouTube has a phenomenal benefit for your employees, and maybe you have some corporate videos on there. But again, you don't want it to bully the rest of your applications on your network. And we're able to simply tie in SSO, Active Directory, and apply all of those policies on there. So again, whether it's blocking credit cards from leaving through our DLP sensor, we have the power to create all of those policies now. And obviously the benefits of the Active Directory policy integration is different groups can have different policies, as I just mentioned here. Bank managers can get to Facebook while limiting YouTube, and then bank tellers can't get to Facebook. So as we talk about some of the options for single sign-on, we really have in my mind, three different styles of a single sign-on capabilities with WatchGuard. So what we can do, the first one is that if we have an environment where we have maybe fast users logging on and off very quickly in an organization, maybe it's on a production floor where workers are logging in, logging out very quickly, I would really recommend a SSO client. Now that's a software that's installed directly onto each computer that is supported by Windows and Mac OS X. So really it's going to reside on that computer. Again, if you have a group policy object or some other management system within your organization that you're able to push that installation package out, your work really isn't that much on installing that client SSO on each computer. Then we also have more of a seamless integration, which as many of you have probably heard, I actually spent about 15 years in education, the last of which I was actually a WatchGuard customer. We use this clientless single sign-on. So rather than go and install this agent on 3,000 computers, I could have pushed it out, sure, but I said, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and implement the clientless SSO option. Went to my primary domain controller, installed the SSO agent, which is basically like a gatekeeper. You can have multiple domains in there, which I hear a lot in the field, people with questions. How can we have multiple domains for a single sign-on option? And certainly, you would install one SSO agent, and then you can tie in multiple event log monitors or exchange monitors from there. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the event log monitor. We're actually going to cover the installation of that and see that in action today. As I log in to a computer, we're able to see that user populate on that computer. So it's going to pull the login or log on and log off events from the domain client computer. It's going to retrieve that group membership information from your domain controller. So again, if Johnny logs into, whether it be some sort of Windows computer, we're going to be able to populate all of those groups that Johnny belongs to and then assign that policy from there. We also have an option for an exchange monitor, and that's going to retrieve the login, log off information from IIS services on your exchange server. So whether it be that you're maybe you're in education, you have some iPads that are joined to your exchange server, you could actually assign policy to those iPads based on what mailbox those computers are checking. And then, again, another popular option in education, we had a lot of terminal services. As you're aware, computers can be quite pricey, and one way to have easy management of multiple computers is simply for terminal services. There's a variety of reasons, other reasons as well, why you would use those terminal services. But then we have an agent that can simply be installed on that terminal services, whether it be Microsoft products, and then that software is installed on each terminal server, and then I can show you where that is as well. So some of the key points of single sign-on, again, these are critical components to allow single sign-on to work properly in your environment. So if you're messing around with a group policy or you've created some sample policies under there, you're going to need to make sure that your default domain policy collects successful audit logon events and audit logon event. So, and I know a number of you have questions, or you would like to follow up on the slide deck so that you can grab these screenshots. Obviously, recording's an option as well. Just go ahead and email me. I'll throw that email address up at the very end. Email me, and I'll send you over a copy of the slides so you can see where this is. But essentially, if you look at your audit policy here, we have two key components that we need to be able to audit, because again, that single sign-on agent is simply looking at your event logs, and it's saying it's looking for sign-on attempts. For instance, Johnny signed on onto this computer, and then it's able to assign that policy. Some other key points of the single sign-on: make sure you install the SSO agent with either domain admin permissions or domain users, a user account that has that proper security permissions. Now you'll find out real quick, if you try to install the SSO agent and you don't have the right permissions, it's actually going to give you a warning on there as well that you don't have the right permissions. Now, as I mentioned before, if you do have more than one domain, or maybe you want to look at a load balancing, a failover type situation, you can install an SSO agent. Then you can have multiple instances of the event log monitor for each domain or multiple domains on there. Now, an exciting new feature with FireWare XTM OS version 11.10, we are now introducing the option to enable SSO single sign-on through the branch office VPN tunnels. So that means if you have a corporate domain controller, and then maybe you have 50 different branch offices, and you want to be able to identify those users at your branch office, you can simply click on this option here, enable single sign-on through the branch office VPN tunnel. I know a lot of you are excited about that. I'm excited. It's going to solve a lot of my customers' needs out there. So looking at, let's go ahead and ditch the slide deck then and look at more of a hands-on setup, look at how that option is running. Now, in my environment, I am running a lot of you are interested in what we run as engineers, as more of a demo environment. I'm actually running on a little Intel NUC here, and I have Dimension 2 beta. That's, again, that Dimension Command server. I'm running a virtual instance of our XTM. Now, we do have virtual instances of our XTM as well as our XCS versions. One of the upcoming sessions, I believe it's next month actually, we're going to be talking about high availability and failing over, and I'll show that to you by having multiple firewalls in there. I have a Windows server, and then I have an XP client, simply because of the footprint of XP is considerably smaller than, let's say, a Windows server might be. So as we look at that Windows server here, again, we're running Dimension Command. I can see all of my devices here. I'll give you just a few preview tips to whet your appetite to check this out in the future. But again, this is Dimension 2.0 with the option of managing your individual firewalls. So right here, I can see all of my firewalls. I can see my health. So my CPU usage, memory usage, when my feature key expires, uptime, etc. I can also look at more details of the license as well. Now, for those of you that have multiple firewalls, you can actually come in here and view a map. Either it's going to do a geolocate on the IP address, or you can actually put in your locations based on your GPS coordinates. So very cool things. I'm going to go ahead and start to dive in here into the firewall. Again, this is that XPMB. It's a small office running here. Now, right from here, I can see that I have all of these the dimension reports just like I had, but we now have the option to go into open FireWare web UI. I can open that either in a new tab, or I can just get right in there. So right here, I'm going to switching into my client that is joined to the domain. We can see that simply by, we see here Windows XP, this computer, or it's joined to the domain here. I'm going to go ahead and type in my username and my password. go ahead and log in. Now, what that's doing in the background is, if I look at my event log monitor on my Windows server, it just generated a event in there that agent is going to be listening to. And what we can actually do is come under here, authentication. We can actually monitor that actually system status authentication list. We can actually monitor what users are identified on the firewall. So right from here, we see the administrator. That's actually my server session. I did want to show you, so if you look at Event Viewer here, and we have the Windows logs, and under Security, you're going to see those login attempts. So as you look at those logon attempts, that's what the single sign-on agent's looking at when the user logs on. And once I go out to, let's say, whatever website I'm going to, that policy is going to be associated, and I'll go ahead and show that to you in a little bit. So what's actually happening here with the agent, now this is a computer that the agent has been installed on and it has been configured for. I'll go ahead and show you how that setup is. I'm going to go ahead and log on to the SSO agent configuration. The default for that is admin and read-write as the password. There's also a read-only one as well. And I just saw this new user identification pop up here. Again, just like we had with WSM, we're going to simply pull that on a time basis. So this is looking at every 30 seconds. We saw Johan just refresh here on this computer with this IP address. Very cool things. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. Now, a couple of things to note is the default password for that is admin read-write. We can go ahead and change those users simply by coming under user management, changing the password here, which I would highly recommend setting up those passwords for your environment. And again, that's to log on to the SSO management tools. So what we can actually do, let me just show you the setup that I have here, is that I have a domain, WatchGuard-lab.com. My NetBIOS domain name is just WatchGuard-lab. I'm going to go ahead and set up the IP addresses of the domain controller or multiple domain controllers if I wanted to. I have this set up simply because it's a lab environment. You might have a special LDAP or SSO agent user that you might specify for your organization. You can certainly pick anything you want as long as it's in the, you can either do the distinguished name format, user principal name, or a pre-Windows 2000 format there. I simply choose the UPN format because that's the easiest as opposed to getting in the distinguished name. Now, if you haven't realized, the easiest way to get the distinguished name, if you chose that route, is simply by coming under ADSI, and I apologize, let me go do that a little bit slower for you. Just go into the Start menu. I just type in ADSI, populates up with ADSI Edit. So I can go ahead and under here, choose either location. As a network administrator, I use this quite a bit, this ADSI tool, because I can simply come under here and choose my distinguished name, copy and paste it out as needed. So a great little Windows tip for you as well. I'm going to go ahead and put in the password of the searching user, confirm that password, and that's all there is to setting up the domain name. Now, the other thing is, as we talk about the SSO agent contact, as I mentioned, there's a number of other ways that you can actually, the SSO agent simply is the gatekeeper for these other methods as well. So as I mentioned, today we're going to look at the event log monitor that's simply looking at the security audit logs in there. If we wanted to, we could also throw in enable SSO client on individual computers, and we can specify different priorities. We can also specify an Exchange monitor. Now, if I was running an Exchange on there, that would simply log on and find out what users are logging into or what IP addresses are checking what mailboxes. You can reorder those So for the sake, I'm just going to enable the event log monitor. And then the contact domains is simply telling us, tying in a domain name to an IP address. So again, here we have event log monitor, domain name, and then the IP address of your domain controller. We also, so that's the configuration of that. And I'll just flip over and show you the basic installation, where to get that agent tool from. So let me just sign into a fresh server here where I haven't installed that previously. Let me close up some of these windows for you. Now, we did, in case you haven't noticed, previously you had to have a login to WatchGuard to be able to download any software. We have now taken that out of the password, so anyone can get there. You simply go to software.watchguard.com. That's going to alias you into this website. So it gives you, again, the software downloads. If you haven't checked out the quick links here, WSM, Dimension 2.0, I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what, I've got one of the latest and greatest from WatchGuard, the M200 or 300, or maybe it's the 400, 500. I'm just going to choose that M400. So as I look at the options for SSO client, we can simply scroll down. We have a number of different options here. Now, as I mentioned to you, the single sign-on agent is that gatekeeper essentially for, or the traffic controller for different environments. Do I have the client installed or the Exchange monitor? So what I was showing you was this single sign-on agent. Now, if I had a fast user switching, I would use this client or a Mac OS client here as well. We also have the single sign-on Exchange monitor download, either a 32-bit or a 64-bit for you, and then the terminal services option right here. So you simply go ahead and choose the single sign-on agent. It's going to go ahead and download. I'm going to go ahead and run that. And again, it's going to, this installer is going to install the SSO agent as well as the event log monitor as well. I'm going to choose the default. It tells me that it's already been installed and would I like to continue. So I'm going to say install a single sign-on agent as well as event log monitor. Now, if I wanted to set up multiple other domain controllers, I could simply set this up to just the event log monitor for the subsequent domain controllers. Go ahead. Now, just real as a caution, this is looking for a format of domain /username. So if I didn't have something right, I will just go ahead and show you. It's going to give me a prompt that it's not correct. Going to go ahead and install, and it's saying failed to install service due to incorrect credentials input. So that's the indication that it hasn't been installed. But actually, once you do get those proper credentials in there, then you can simply come over into my other environment where I was showing you, where we have this single sign-on agent installed and configured. Now, the other side of that, once we have the SSO agent configured, we simply come in, log into our, whether it's our web UI or our WSM, and more the Windows executable style. And then we can simply scroll down, and under authentication, we have our single sign-on options. So right from here, we have enable single sign-on with Active Directory. The cache data is how long are we going to know about it obviously, when we have thousands of users on the network, the longer we know that data is cached, then the lower bandwidth or network concerns that we need to be worried about. Then we also have enable single sign-on SSO options through the branch office VPN tunnel, as I mentioned. And then from there, we also have the terminal services. So if you have any terminal servers in your environment, I'll just go ahead and show you how to set that up. You simply come in here, type in the IP address of the agent that you have the RDP on, save it, and it's that simple. Because obviously in a terminal server environment, you have multiple users on one IP address. So on other environments where you have only one user per IP address, then a traditional single sign-on is going to be able to work. But obviously for terminal servers, servers, you're going to have those multiple users, and that's why that extra agent is required for you there. So with that basically wraps up integrating single sign-on with Active Directory in your organization. Let me go ahead and bring up my email address. If you have any questions or you have any follow-up, feel free to reach out to your local sales engineer. If you're in the Northwest, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. We also have the next FireBytes, which is on August 14th. We're going to be covering the Fire Cluster high availability. And again, if you haven't checked it out, high availability is giving you that option. Just like if you have a cell phone, either Apple or Android, and you want to upgrade it, you recognize that it has the reboot process and it has that downtime. Just like with WatchGuard, if you're going to upgrade your OS to leverage some new features in there, it's going to require a reboot. And sometimes for some of you clients out there, whether it's a bank or a financial institution of some sort, downtime equals money. And you don't want to be in a position where you have downtime because you're going to be out thousands of money. So Fire Cluster is a great way to make sure that you have that 99.99% uptime on there. But again, want to thank you for attending today's FireBytes. Hopefully it was helpful for you. Feel free to reach out if you have future suggestions on what to cover with FireBytes, and we'll go ahead